Washingtonian, as did I. She went to American University. So we do have something in common,
That's
Karen.
right.
Nice to have you with
Good
us.
to see you.
Oh, you're younger than I am, so you were there
Thank
after
you.
I...
Ageless, as we say.
Now you have, you're syndicated. You have a syndicated column.
That's right.
And you have contributed to Parade Magazine, the Washington Post, the Baltimore Sun, Chicago Tribune, Vogue, Family Circle, and all the credits that you have. If I went on and on, we wouldn't have time for an interview. You're a regular contributor to Joan Rivers' show.
That's right.
So as Joan Rivers would say, can we talk?
Yes, it's Washington political dish, as she says.
Very good. Now, the first question I have for you is, how do you attain the credentials that people will come to you with, you know, they call you, like, Karen, did you know that so-and-so? Or do people shy away from you because they figure that whatever they tell you, you're going to write? How do you develop that certain...
I think that it has to be relationships based on trust, Ed. And I've been doing this for a long time, and I think people know that I thoroughly check out a story if somebody comes to me with a tip. You know, and I really make sure that I'm right on before I use it, or I don't take a chance. So I think that it's really a relationship built on trust over a period of time.
Now, I forgot to mention, you do have a radio show every week on WRC Radio, right? On
That's correct.
Monday nights?
Do a segment on Monday nights.
6:30.
Thank you.
Well, now, this week in the news, let's talk about what's happening in Washington.
Well, certainly Bob Packwood's diaries.
I'm sure that, yeah, that's got to be the biggest story in the news, and they voted just the other day to try to obtain his diaries. Now, the first question I have, why would anybody want to keep a diary like that? You know, if I were doing that kind of stuff, I wouldn't want to, assuming he did it, I wouldn't want to keep it in a written form.
And his friends did it and talked about it, right?
Yeah, that's right.
I think a lot of it is anybody who gets to the House, or most of the people who get to the House want to be in the Senate. Most of the people who get as far as the Senate all have these great, they envision themselves as being president one day. And it's kind of a thing that, well, if I'm going to get there, everything I say is going to be worth reading. And I think that there is a lot of that feeling of self-importance when somebody keeps this kind of diary.
8,200 pages.
8,200 pages is hard to believe that it could be steamy and sexy and, you know, all that exciting as a Jackie Collins novel.
Maybe Kitty Kelly will do a unauthorized bio or something on him.
I hope not for his sake.
But now, is there, you know, the other night in Congress, I think it was Senator Byrd who made the suggestion that possibly...
That he stepped down.
That he stepped down. Why put the Senate through this embarrassment? This has never been done in the Senate, to my knowledge.
Well, it hasn't been, and it's the first, you know, the Senate usually tries to support their own, members of their own body. So it is really a first that this would happen. And I think a lot of it, you know, as Barbara Mikulski said, that we don't want to be the Senate Select Committee on Voyeurism.
Yeah.
But it's become a real human thing. And they're in a bind. I don't think there is voting as much for the issue is that how can they go against someone if there is sexual harassment involved?
Well, maybe some of them are afraid their names are in there, too.
Well, I think a lot of people, and a lot of particularly former House and Senate members that I've talked to, are very concerned that their names might be in the diaries, as well as a lot of women who had consensual so-called affairs with Bob Packwood, or at least alleged affairs, and it wasn't harassment. And now their names may come out, too. So there's a lot of very scared people around.
This is over a 10 or 20-year period.
Right.
And that wouldn't hold too much water at this point, would it, or would it?
Well, you never know. I mean, if somebody is in a responsible position today and their name comes out, I mean, you know, it might personally affect them or their families, be embarrassing to them.
Yeah.
So I think there's a lot of concern. I think it goes to show us Amy's going to keep a diary, do it in code.
Is this sort of an East Coast version of Heidi Fleiss or something like that, or what? I don't know.
Well, I think that it's gone to outside the Beltway, and I think that really keeping a diary is about the most human thing that people do. I mean, everybody out there can relate to it. So I think that that's one reason there's so much interest.
Every country. Remember, was it several years ago in Britain they had the Christine Keeler episode? Wasn't that
That's right.
And so nobody is immune to this sort of behavior.
Really not, and even in our own country. I mean, there's always been indiscretions among politicians, you know, going as far back. Think of Wilbur Mills splashing the tidal basin.
Oh, yeah, remember Fannie Fox.
All these people, you know, Wayne Hayes, and you go back even further, Grover Cleveland, when he ran for president, everybody chanted, Mama, where's my pie? And then when he got elected, gone to the White House, ha ha ha. Not new in politics. Ben Franklin, FDR, they were all notorious philanderers.
Yeah, now see, journalism is a lot different. Now you mentioned FDR, and now that the books are coming out, it was well known that he had
Lucy Mercer.
Lucy Mercer. In fact, she was with him when he died. and she had to leave because, with all the family and so on. But the press didn't write about those things then.
Well, we didn't write about JFK during his days
right.
either. I wasn't around, but my predecessor.
Now, what changed the...
I think Watergate has changed a lot of it. I think that what Watergate did was, first of all, it put television news into everybody's living rooms, but it made the press a lot more glamorous. They were glamorized, and everybody wanted to get into it. People wanted to become reporters, so it became very, very competitive. So anything became fair game.
And I guess these tabloids that you buy on the newsstands, they haven't hurt the business either, because a lot of people like to get titillated, don't they?
Well, I think, nobody admits they buy the National Enquirer, but they all stand in line at the Safeway or the Giant and read it.
Checking out.
That's exactly right. I mean, I have a funny story. A Senate wife told me, and this was during the Gary Hart, Donna Rice episode, the scandal a few years ago.
That's right.
And they were on the cover of the National Enquirer, and she was at the airport and saw them on the cover on the monkey business and was dying to pick it up, but was afraid that one of her husband's constituents may be watching. So she waited till the last boarding call and the coast was clear. And just as she leaned over, this big arm reached over her shoulder and grabbed the top copy, and she looked up and it was Walter Mondale. Which goes to show you everybody loves sex and loves gossip.
Now, how have things changed here in Washington over the last year? Now, the present administration has been in office just about a year. Are things a little different in D.C.?
I think that they are. There's a lot of excitement. There's the energy, the youth. We have a first lady who is really taking things into her own hands. In the beginning, we heard more about her haircuts and budget cuts.
That's true. She got off to a rocky start, didn't she?
She really did. But I think now her image has kind of gotten... she knows who she is, and the public knows, and they're starting to listen to what she has to say about health care reform.
Now, you have a little something to contribute to that.
Well, I brought a gift for you, Ed, because this week she really blasted the insurance industry, as we all know.
Yeah.
So there's this terrific T-shirt, which I'm sure they would all love to have, and some other people might not appreciate, but it says Clinton's health care reform, and it's a great picture of Hillary with an old haircut, I might add, with a Band-Aid over her mouth. There might be some people that want to hear that, but there's others that think that what she says is worthwhile. That's right.
Now, if I can ask this in a delicate way, does she call many of the shots in the White House? In other words, we have been led to believe by some people that she is really pulling the strings for Bill.
Well, I'll tell you, I think...
Bill Strings, if
Bill Strings. I think on some things she has full control. For example, she really watches his diet. And as a matter of fact, not only are they serving grilled food instead of fried food at White House dinners and that kind of thing, and a lot of veggies, no peas, of course, but other vegetables, but she has really declared the White House fridge off limits. And he just loves desserts, and particularly ice cream. And one night he gathered up his Secret Service entourage and went off, sneaked out to the home of an FOB. And of course, as we know, that's Friends of Bill.
Friends of FOB.
And finished off a quart of French vanilla before coming back to the White House in the wee hours.
Oh, did you keep that quiet?
Well, that's quiet. But I think that it really, on a more serious note, is real teamwork between the two of them. And I think we're very fortunate that we have a president and a first lady, who are both very bright and have a lot to contribute.
Well, now, other first ladies have been involved, not quite as blatantly as Hillary. I mean, by having her own office in the White House.
Well, that's right, and she's a lawyer.
Now, there was Nancy Reagan. There was the talk about the astrologer and all of that sort of thing. Do you recall any other presidents' wives that were as influential, let us say?
I think behind the scenes, certainly Rosalind Carter and her push for mental health. And I think a lot of them, Barbara Bush on the literacy campaign, and behind the scenes, all of these women have been very strong women advising their husbands. I think that Hillary's style is very different, and she's come across as a serious professional. As a matter of fact, some of the staff thought she was a little too serious for a while, and they decided to lighten her up one evening, and they pulled a prank. They got a whoopee cushion and put it under a seat that was intended for her at a big dinner, but the joke backfired in more ways than one because the president sat in the chair intended for his wife.
Now, how about entertainment? We all know that. And back in the Kennedy days, they had Pablo Casals and people like that trying to bring a little culture to the White House. What is the Clintons were sort of involved with the West Coast crowd, like Barbra Streisand and people like that.
Well, I think the connections initially came through the Thomasons, of course, the producers who were their friends, Linda Bloodworth Thomason and Harry Thomason. And then they got a lot of controversy there because the Thomasons were getting a little too visible and created some problems with Travelgate. And other things. Now, of course, Barbara Streisand came in and raised a lot of money for Bill Clinton initially, and has been a White House house guest in the Lincoln bedroom. We don't know if she's seen the ghosts that are reported to be there, but she's been there. Judy Collins has been a house guest, Paul Newman, Joanne Woodward. But I think that what's happened is that he was so criticized that now he's trying to shy a little bit away from that Hollywood image. And they're trying to bring in guests from the business community.
Now, he hasn't had any big dinners.
Well, he's had some big dinners, but no official state dinners. There's been no sort of pomp and ceremony. They're more what we call informal dinners, and he tends to working dinners, as he calls them.
Now, in less than a minute, can you tell us what we should be looking for now that the elections are over? Is this going to affect the White House in any way with the Republican victories? Or what do you think?
I think that it's not unusual in an off-year election to see the party out of power pull up some seats. And I think what the Democrats are going to have to do is really get on their toes for the next time around, because there's a lot of seats at stake in the congressional races next year.
Any repercussions from the Packwood incident, do you think, that we should be looking for?
I think it's too early to tell. We have to wait and see what, if anything, comes out. And don't forget, even though the diaries are subpoenaed, there's still time. It doesn't mean they're all going to be released.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much,
Karen.
Thank you,
Ed.
Nice to have you with us.
It's fun to talk to you.
Okay. Don't forget now, we want to have you go with us on our cruise to the Caribbean in February, so you might want to call and find out about it. That's American Express Travel Mazza Gallery, and in Florida, 362-4400. You call and find out more about it, won't you? And join us again, Channel 8, 7600D, Boston Boulevard, Springfield, Virginia, 22153. And this is Ed Walker saying so long. See you next week.